The doors of St. Marmotte's Cathedral groaned as they swung open, their iron hinges warped by heat. Smoke curled in the air, thick with the stench of charred wood, melted wax, and something sickly. Burned flesh, perhaps. The survivors stumbled inside, their armor dented, their robes torn, blood caking in their hands and faces. Aether led the way, his breath ragged, his fingers trembling against the haft of his broken halberd. The vast nave stretched before them, the towering stone columns fractured, their divine carvings blackened by fire. The stained glass windows that once bathed the hall in holy light had been shattered, their remnants crunching beneath the weary boots. At the heart of it all stood the altar, or what remained of it. The great bedrock cross, an immovable testament to the Maker's presence, had been split clean in two. The upper half lay crumbled at its base, as if struck down by an impossible force. Aether felt his stomach turn. It was not merely broken, it was defiled. A low wind howled through the ruined cathedral, carrying embers through rafters like dying stars. The once sacred banners of the Maker hung in tatters, their sigils unrecognizable beneath soot and bloodstains. Pews had been overturned, splintered, as if by clawed hands. And in the dim glow of the firelight, dark figures, former allies, and their corpses lay strewn across the floor, their lifeless eyes staring into nothing. No one spoke. There were no prayers, no desperate calls for salvation, only silence. Save for the soft drip of blood from Aether's gauntlet. He stepped forward towards the ruined altar, his heart hammering in his chest. Aether stood before the shattered cross, the firelight flickering against its jagged edges. It was all wrong. The Maker's will was immutable. Bedrock did not break. Not by mortal hands, not by anything that should exist in this world. Behind him, the quiet murmurs of grief filled the ruined cathedral. Frederick knelt among the dead, his fingers trembling as he closed the vacant eyes of a fallen comrade. The priest's robes, once pristine, were now filthy and torn, the fabric stained crimson. His lips moved in prayer behind his mask, but Aether knew there was no conviction behind his words, only duty. Nearby, Purprayer, scarred, silent, leaned against the toppled pillar, staring at nothing. His warhammer rested across his knees, his grip slack. He was alive, but something in him shattered along with the cross. And Vasily, fierce, unyielding Vasily, stood with his back to them all. His hands balled into fists, his shoulders rose and fell with each breath, his rage barely contained. The flames reflected in his wild eyes, but he said nothing. Aether exhaled slowly, his own hands tightening his sides. It had come to this. He thought back to Waydin, the march through the sewers, the smell of rot and stagnant water clinging to their cloaks, the uneasy whispers of soldiers who had fought this war too long, their hope fraying like threadbare cloth. They had emerged out of Athlon's underbelly like ghosts, striking hard and fast, but the cultists had been waiting. The ambush had shattered their lines, driven them back through the tunnels they had once seen as their salvation. Sparkstone had been worse. They had regrouped, bloodied but determined, only to find the cult's forces stronger than ever. Wormatic banners fluttered over the streets. The air stunk of burning flesh and incense. You could still hear the screams, the clash of steel, the way the cobblestones ran red beneath their boots. Then Pinehay, the final stand. They had known they would not win. Even Vasily, ever defiant, had seen the writing on the wall, but they had fought anyway. Not for victory, but for something greater, one last defiance against the abyss that sought to consume them. Aether had watched comrades fall, had felt the weight of each death settle on his soul, and in the end, they had lost. Now they stood there, and the ruins of their last sanctuary. The battle was over. They had nothing left. Aether looked at the broken cross again, his jaw tightening. Had the Maker abandoned them? Had he ever been with them at all? Aether tore his gaze away from the broken cross and looked at Frederick. The priest's hands trembled as he reached towards the shattered stone, as if touching it would prove it wasn't real. His eyes, red-rimmed from grief, reflected the flames that licked the cathedral walls. "It isn't possible," Frederick whispered again, shaking his head. "Bedrock does not break. The Maker willed it into being. This can't be." Aether swallowed the lump rising in his throat. He understood Frederick's horror. The cross had stood as a symbol of the Maker's presence, his unwavering strength. It had been their beacon, their proof that even in the darkest nights, they were not alone. And now, it lay in ruin. "We are being tested," Aether said at last, his voice steadier than he felt. "The Maker has not forsaken us." Frederick turned to him, despair flickering his gaze. "How can you be so sure after everything? The battle in Sparkstone, the retreat to Pinehay. We lost, Aether. And now, this." He gestured to the ruined cathedral, to the dead lying motionless in the firelight haze. "How much more can we suffer before we accept maybe Warma will be victorious?" Aether clenched his jaw. He could not believe that. He thought back to Sparkstone, to the moment when the cultists had nearly crushed them. They had been surrounded, their forces dwindling, their weapons dull, and their bodies battered. The enemy was closing in. Then, the sky had opened. The Maker's power had lifted them, let them soar over the burning city, guided them to Pinehay when all had seemed lost. It had been divine intervention, a miracle that had saved them from annihilation. No, the Maker had not abandoned them. But if that was true, then what did this mean? Aether looked at the shattered cross, the jagged wound in its center like a gaping maw. If the Maker was testing them, what was the lesson? Aether let his fingers brush against the broken stone, feeling its unnatural, jagged edges beneath his gloves. The heat from the burning cathedral pressed against his back, the weight of it suffocating. Frederick was still kneeling, silent now, eyes locked in the ruinal altar. Behind him, Purpurator and Vasily stood in stunned silence, their battered armor catching and flickering in the firelight. "This is more than a test," Purpurator finally muttered, voice hollow. He turned to gaze at Aether. "This is a sign." Aether met his gaze. "A sign of what?" Purpurator hesitated, his usual defiance by exhaustion. "That the Maker's gone," he said, almost reluctantly. "Or worse, that he never was with us." Aether's gut twisted. He had fought beside Purpurator for years. He had seen his faith endure through horror and bloodshed. To hear him, voice such doubt, now sent a cold shiver through him. "No!" Aether forced the word out. "The Maker lifted us from Sparkstone. We should have died there, but he granted us the ability to fly. If he'd abandoned us, why would he have saved us? To prolong our suffering?" Vasily muttered bitterly, arms crossed over his dented breastplate. Aether exhaled sharply, frustration bubbling beneath his grief. "We cannot fall to despair. If we lose our faith now, then we lose everything." Vasily let out a humorous chuckle. "We have already lost everything." Silence. The cathedral groaned as more of its ancient beams collapsed under the weight of the fire. Embers drifted through the broken glass-stained windows, catching in Vasily's unkempt hair like dying stars. Aether looked at them, his brothers in arms, his friends. He had led them through the sewers of Kadus, through a doomed battle at Athlon, through the fall of Sparkstone, the final, desperate stand at Pinehay. And now here they stood mourning at the feet of a shattered god. He clenched his fists. If the Maker is testing us, we must endure, Aether said, more to himself than to them. If he has forsaken us, then we must prove him wrong. Frederick rose slowly to his feet, wiping at his eyes. And if he never was? Aether hesitated. The thought had gnawed at the edge of his mind at the moment they stepped into the cathedral, but he pushed it down and swallowed it like poison. Then we still stand, he said firmly, because we have nothing else. No one answered. The fire crackled around them, and above the broken cross cast a long, jagged shadow over the ruins of their faith. Aether ran his gloved finger along the jagged edge of the broken cross, the impossibility of it gnawing at his mind. The bedrock was not just shattered, it was ruined, as if something had willed it so. The cathedral burned around them, the air thick with the acrid stench of smoke and charred wood. Frederick knelt before the altar, his shoulders shaking. "This can't be," he whispered, voice barely audible over the crackling flames. Behind him, Purpurator stood motionless, his hands, too, clenched into fists. However, Vasily was different now. He'd managed to escape his devolution into grief and doubt. He stood tall, his weary form illuminated by the glow of the fire. And for a moment, he seemed unshaken. "We should not doubt the Maker. This is a test," Vasily said, his voice steady. "We have been brought to a low so that we may rise again." Purpurator turned sharply. "A test? Look around you, Vasily. The Maker's sign is being destroyed. If this is a test, then what is the lesson? That we are fools for believing, fools for following?" Vasily did not flinch. "No, the Maker has not abandoned us. We are meant to endure, no matter what stands against us." Aether exhaled, steadying himself, thinking back to what they've all been through together. And now, here they were, standing in the wreckage of the last place they believed safe. "We should not be alive," Aether said, his voice measured. "The Maker granted us the means to escape Sparkstone. He guided us here. There must be a meaning in this." Purpurator shook his head, turning back to the shattered altar. "Then tell me what it is." No one answered at first. The fire's glow cast long shadows, illuminating their scars, their exhaustion, their losses. Aether clenched his fists. "We still stand," he said. "And as long as we do, the Maker's will endures." Vasily nodded, firm in his belief. "Faith is not broken with stone." Aether met his gaze, drawing strength from it. "We're not done yet." Outside, the night stretched on, the world uncertain, but within the ruined cathedral, even as the cross lay in pieces, something unyielding remained. Aether stood still, watching the embers swirl in the shattered cathedral, Vasily's words lingering in the air. "Faith is not broken with stone. Faith is not broken with stone." Aether drilling it into his own head. But as the flames ate away at the sanctum, as the bedrock cross lay impossibly sundered before them, doubt gnawed at the edges of his mind. Then, from the ruined entrance of St. Marmotte's Cathedral, a figure stepped through the smoke. Undie. Aether gritted his teeth as Undie approached, the sickly green glow of your staff casting twisted shadows across the ruined cathedral walls. The Wormatic leader moved with an air of certainty, stepping over the debris-strewn floor as though he were already its rightful ruler. His voice, smooth and deliberate, filled the hollowed remains of St. Marmotte's with an almost mocking reverence. "I never imagined I'd find you here, Aether," Undine mused, glancing at the broken bedrock cross. "I expected you to be crushed beneath the weight of Pinehe's ruin, or perhaps still scrambling through the muck of Kadus like the rats you've been reduced to." His gaze swept over to the exhausted survivors. "And yet, here you are. Battered, blooded, and beaten, and still clinging to this." He gestured toward the cathedral, his expression darkening with amusement. "This broken shell of a faith." He let out a soft, knowing chuckle. "But tell me, Aether," he continued, pacing slowly before them. "Where is your maker now? Was he here watching as your warriors fell? Did he hear their dying prayers? Did he weep as your banners burned, as your holy city of Waydin was reduced to ruin?" Undine paused before the shattered cross, running his gloved fingers across its jagged edges. "This is no mere stone," he murmured, his voice almost tender. "This was your proof, wasn't it? Proof that your maker was with you. Unshakable, unbreakable. But look at it now." He turned back to them, eyes gleaming. "Snapped like dry bone." He let the words sink in before stepping forward, closer now, close enough that Aether could see a faint smirk playing at his lips. "What does that tell you? That your maker has abandoned you? That he was never here to begin with? Or perhaps," he whispered, tilting his head, "he is dead." Vasily stepped forward, fists clenched. "Heresy," he spat. "The Maker is eternal." Undine merely laughed, shaking his head. "Then why doesn't he answer?" His eyes darted between them, measuring their expressions, their doubt. "How many times have you called out to him, only to be met with silence? How many of your people have died with prayers on their lips, believing he would save them?" He turned back to the shattered cathedral. "Your god has fallen silent, Aether," Undine continued. "But Warma still speaks. He calls to you now, offering you purpose." He extended a hand. "Join us. Accept the truth. Swear yourself to the abyss. And aid us in our mission." His smile widened, his voice almost gentle now. "Or refuse, and watch St. Marmotte's Cathedral fall to the abyss, as everything else will." The cathedral cracked with the sound of distant flames, the weight of his words pressing upon the room like a suffocating fog. Aether stood still, his mind racing, his heart pounding. Undine waited, and so did Warma. Aether exhaled slowly, steadying himself against the weight of Undine's words. Around him the others stood silent, their breaths shallow, their eyes locked onto the Wormatic leader. Vasily was the first to move. He stepped forward, placing himself between Undyne and Aether, his stance unshaken. "You think we are broken," Vasily said, voice firm. "You think our faith is shattered because our cities burn, because our cross has fallen." His eyes flickered with defiance. "But faith is not stone. It's not banners or walls. It is not something that can be burned or broken." Undyne chuckled, shaking his head. "Ah, but it was stone, wasn't it? And your God let it be shattered. Perhaps because he does not care. Or perhaps because he is no longer here at all." "Enough!" Aether's voice cut through the smog-filled air like a blade. "You speak in riddles and poison, Undyne, but we know what you are." He took a step forward, gripping his halberd so tightly that his knuckles went white. "You are not here to offer salvation. You are here to mock the desperate, to tempt the broken." He met Undyne's gaze, unflinching. "But we are neither." Frederick, still clutching his wounded arm, managed a weak laugh. "Do you really think that we'd rather crawl to your abyss than die standing?" Undyne sighed, almost disappointed. "A shame," he murmured, shaking his head. "You Makarists are always so stubborn, clinging to the old ways, the old God, even when he has forsaken you." He took a slow step backward, raising his staff high. The sickly green glow pulsed, and the very walls of the cathedral groaned in response. "Then so be it." His voice was softer now, almost regretful. "Your Maker has abandoned you, but the abyss never will." The ground trembled. From the ruined rafters above, black tendrils of smoke began to twist downward, seeping into the cracks of the cathedral floor. Aether felt the air grow heavier, suffocating, as an unnatural chill spread through the chamber. The walls, once lined in faded murals of saints and warriors, darkened as the corruption took hold. Undyne turned away, his form already fading into the encroaching abyssal mist. "You well knew, Aether," he whispered, his voice echoing unnaturally. "If not now, then soon." With that, he was gone. Aether staggered back as the cathedral quaked beneath them, the ancient stone groaning as if in agony. The green glow from Undyne's staff had left its mark, and now the corruption was spreading like ink through water. Cracks spider-webbed across the once sacred walls, seeping with an unnatural blackness that pulsed and writhed as if alive. The air grew thick with a heavy presence that did not belong in this world. The murals that once depicted the Maker's triumphs twisted and distorted, their figures warping into grotesque mockeries of themselves. Saints turned into wailing spectres, warriors hollowed out and gone. Suffering husks. The remnants of the stained glass shattered, not outward but inward, as if the cathedral itself was inhaling the corruption, drinking deep of the abyss that now gripped its foundation. Vasily gritted his teeth, gripping his hammer. "No," he snarled, stepping forward, his voice a prayer and defiance. "This is the Maker's ground. This is his house." But the corruption did not stop. The floor beneath them trembled, ancient tiles cracking as they were consumed by a spreading abyssal stone. The bedrock cross, already sundered, was swallowed in the tide of darkness, its remnants twisting, elongating, reforming into something unholy. Aether's breath caught in his throat as the symbol of their faith was reshaped into a jagged, spiked obelisk, its surface slick with an unnatural filth, glowing faintly with an eerie, pulsating light. Frederick backed away, eyes wide with horror. "We have to leave, now!" But as he turned, the great doors of the cathedral slammed shut with a deafening crash, sealing them inside. The last slivers of torchlight from the ruined city outside were snuffed out as the abyssal tendrils slithered across the windows, choking the last remnants of the Maker's light. The cathedral had become a tomb. Aether clenched his fists, his breath ragged. "We don't run," he said, forcing steel into his voice. "Not from this."